Who's ready to win some money? That's the best way to get the crowd's attention. Who's ready to win some money? All right, well, here's the key, right? If you're listening, here's the key to winning money when you come to Keystone. Show up for First Friday. Future Fridays. So if you guys haven't heard, we relaunched our First Friday initiative here. Our goal is to become the destination for the innovation community in Kansas City. And we are quickly becoming the destination for the innovation community on First Fridays. We have an event called Future Fridays where we demonstrate emerging technologies, highlight some of the emerging technologies that our small business companies are using. We have the ability to demonstrate to people how they can get career paths with our partners at Launch Code and Goodwill, how they can get involved in the tech industries and some of the technologies that we talk about here. So join us, food trucks, music, all night. So we're here from 4:30 to 9 o'clock on every first Friday. So come down and check us out. One of the things we've been doing is we've been doing giveaways during Future Fridays. And so we had a giveaway this last week, and I now have the winners. The winners all get a $100 gift card where they can use at any location of their choosing. At least that's what I've been told. I don't know. I'll have to ask the banker if that's true, right? Yeah, I have to. So let me go ahead and announce the winners because I think most of them are in the crowd right now. The first one, and I swear you might have won the first time we did this too. Maybe it wasn't you, but Flavor Bevco. Give it up. Come on. Second winner. I think I can remember. Oh, no, I did the worst thing I could have done. I mixed up the activation cards and the cards. All right. I think this works still. Rich, dash in between. Don't lose the piece of paper. Apparently, it's the most important part. Next winner, I think he's also here. Yes, he is. Brad Nelson. And then the last one that we're going to announce tonight, because if they're the only one. So the other winner was Shandy. I don't think Shandy's here. So we're going to get an email out to Shandy about her winnings. But the other person who won is Ken Ma. He tried to sit down, but he knew he won. He did. He knew he won. He could feel it in his soul. Where are you guys going to lunch, man? I'm coming with. Right on. Thanks. So, again, we'll be doing this every first Friday, every future Friday here at Keystone. I don't know that I assume that the contest rules and the contest participation will be different every time. Yes, it will be. But join us here, and there's a chance to win, like, real dollars. All right. Facts. All right, let's get into this. So the third session tonight, sometimes we have the opportunity to talk to people that have what I would call very diverse perspectives on what's happening in Kansas City or what might be happening in the surrounding area, what might be happening in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, how an industry might get impacted or be impacted by emerging technologies and so on. And sometimes we get those guests that are able to cross a lot of those lines and a lot of those lanes with us. And tonight we have that. So I usually don't introduce guests. I make them do that themselves because I always F it up. So Matt, if you don't mind, just introduce yourself, maybe tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll kind of get into it.
Perfect. Thank you for having me this evening. Can everybody hear okay? Okay. Matt Michaelis, Chairman and CEO of Emprise Bank. We're headquartered out of Wichita, Kansas. We're a little over $2 billion in assets. We opened up in Kansas City 4 years ago as an expansion market. So we're continuing to grow and build here. Your community has been so incredibly welcoming to us. We've been so successful, we're now looking for new office space because we're outgrowing what we have. So we're thrilled to be in Kansas City. I love Kansas City. So I spend as much time here as I can. But by way of background, I'm actually not a banker by background. I went to the university. I grew up in Wichita. I went to the University of Kansas and then had the opportunity to go work at Solomon Brothers straight out of college. So what I thought was going to be a couple of years in New York turned into 20 years of investment banking and private equity experience. family situations change. Third child comes along. New York's not quite as enjoyable as it was in your 20s and single. So we ended up moving back to Wichita about 10 years ago. And then over the course of the next 5 or 6 years, I got more and more involved in our family business, which is Emprise Bank. And ultimately, beginning of 2018, stepped into the day-to-day leadership role. We'll probably talk a lot about what the last 5 years has looked like in terms of that role, but it's been a really, really enjoyable experience. Professionally, it's been a very significant change from what I was doing beforehand, but it has been very, very enjoyable. We're now leaning heavily into technology, both within our established business, but also as we look to continue to grow, as we look at the trends in the industry, embedded finance, kind of all the things that you see around fintech and the technology-enabled banks. We're trying to be in the middle of all of that. So it's been a fun journey.
So Matt, I want to start with the New York piece because it always is, not being from Kansas City, grew up on the East Coast, spent time overseas. So Kansas City and spent time in Western Kansas. So I've been here long enough to know this is home. Like I've been here 30 years, but a lot of my life was spent elsewhere. The perspective of moving, so you're Wichita native.
Wichita native.
Born and raised.
Born and raised.
All right. Where did you go to high school?
Years. Southeast.
Southeast. All right.
Go Golden Buffs.
Yeah. I think you guys might have been in our conference. I don't know. Dodge City. You guys are 6A school, right?
Yeah.
So you moved to New York City. Like you said, you got the gig with Solomon Brothers. You moved to New York City. What was that experience like moving from Wichita to New York? Like the first kind of impression that you had, what were kind of the key things that you saw in New York City that, piqued your interest or, kind of started to make that feel like a place you might want to stay?
Well, first I was completely overwhelmed and had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I really went for the job, right? It wasn't about New York City or anywhere else. It was really about the career opportunity for me. And I'd been fortunate enough at college to have, I think, 3, maybe 4 kind of interactions with investment banking. So I didn't know a lot, but I knew a little. And it seemed like an interesting profession to pursue. I liked finance. I liked the math side of things. So that made a lot of sense. And then when I got to New York, again, it started with the job and it was something I really enjoyed. Believe it or not, worked with people I really enjoyed. Doesn't always happen, but I was fortunate. And then I started to grow to love the city. The energy, the career opportunities, the diversity, the walkability, density, just the growth and energy was fantastic. I truly think it's the best city in the world. So I loved it. That was home for me.
Sure,
right?
20 years. That's a long time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I lived there longer than I'd lived anywhere else. So it really was home. It was my home.
Was it hard to let go of it to move back to Wichita?
It was. It was a huge change of pace.
Sure.
Which I think I've adapted to over time, but it took some time. And boy, you want to go out to dinner, you want entertainment options, you want a diverse set of friends, you want career opportunities. Wichita's a much different in all those perspectives. But what Wichita has to offer is great people. And I've made really, really good friends. There aren't millions and millions, but I've made a handful of really great friends. It's a place to get involved easily, so you can have really meaningful impact in a community that size. I think the same is probably true in Kansas City. And so it's been a place that, I wouldn't leave today. I will always be in Wichita.
Yeah.
Not to say I don't like to travel, but I will always be in Wichita.
Yeah, no, I get it. Absolutely. There's something about home, and certainly something about that pace, especially as we get older.
Exactly.
So speaking of formative years, not only for you as an individual in New York and understanding things like densibility, walkability, like understanding what the urban lifestyle is like, and we'll get back to that. But from I was having a conversation with someone just a while ago, and they were explaining to me that all of the things that happen to us are really getting us to the next point, right? And so we accumulate a bunch of experiences, we accumulate a bunch of knowledge, and then at some point in time, that starts to manifest itself in whatever we're doing now, like that experience and those knowledge. So what were those, give me 2 or 3 of those things during your time in New York that like have stuck with you in terms of how you run a business or how you manage people or how you think about life in general.
Yeah, well, I was, in some respects, fortunate enough in New York to not have to manage a whole lot of people. So I've spent a lot of time learning that in the last 5 years. But I think the thing, a couple of things that I learned in New York or had exposure to New York that very directly impact what I do today. I would say just broad worldview and a heavy bent towards technology. And so, again, it's been a little over 5 years that I've stepped into the day-to-day leadership role. The number of, I would say, opportunities that we look at that are outside the kind of the normal parameters of community banking. We see interesting opportunities all day long because we engage in those communities and our minds are open to that. You know, most, and maybe this is an unfair generalization, I think most bankers have grown up in that industry and have very little ability to think more broadly than that. So with the technology bent, I mean, we've gone through and upgraded almost every customer-facing system. That's not easy, but almost every customer-facing system to deliver better experiences, to be able to think more individually, so everybody gets an experience that's tailored to them, not a mass market experience. And then we've also launched a banking as a service platform, which allows fintechs to build on top of our platform and charter. It allows us to go support embedded finance. So if you're a vertical SaaS company, if you're a consumer brand with an embedded customer base, we can go build financial products into your customer experience, right? So it'll generate some revenue. It'll make it a stickier product. It'll give your customers broader visibility into however they engage with your specific product or brand.
So Matt, so when I met you, you were one of the early partners that we had as part of what we were doing with Keystone during the pandemic when we launched Keystone Labs, and we were doing some innovation work there. And I remember very vividly you talking to me about the technology being a means to an end to the like the holy grail of community banking is that relationship piece. So all of those transitions that you've made of systems have been to get you to that end. Yeah. And help me understand why that is more important maybe in the sector of banking that you're in versus maybe some of the other commercial lending categories or so on.
Well, so I think so. We talk about it as personalized and relevant experiences, right? What we want to deliver to each one of you is a personalized and relevant experience. So it's tailored to you, and it's touching you at the relevant time, right? So if I think about an offer for a new product, for example, we want to make sure we're delivering that offer to you, and it's something that is meaningful to you, and we're delivering it at a time that is easily digestible by you. And then obviously we have to make sure that it's easy to take action on and all of those things. I think that applies across all of our customer segments. So we're in consumer, we're in commercial, we're in trust, we're in wealth. I think all of those, I almost would go broader and say any customer-facing business has to think about what that experience looks like. Because to me, at the end of the day, if you're not delivering that customer experience, somebody else will. And in our industry, it's the fintechs today that are really dominating those new and innovative experiences. And the big banks aren't far behind. But I look at somebody like JP Morgan, I could say the same about Bank of America, Citi, et cetera. I think, don't quote me exactly on this, but JP Morgan spends about $12 billion a year on their tech platform. Our assets are not quite $2.5 billion, right? So you can't compete on spend. So, and I'm rambling, but we think a lot about partnerships and how do we go partner with innovative technology companies to help deliver that experience, right?
So I've heard someone recently talking about fintech being saturated. Like there's so many fintech companies out there, fintech accelerators. You could, can't swing a dead cat by the tail without hitting a fintech accelerator kind of jokes everywhere. What are your thoughts on that? Like is fintech a saturated space, or where are the elements where you see where technology hasn't touched what you do and it needs to?
So let me first start by saying fintech means many different things, right? So I think just to say fintech is saturated is probably a little too general, right? So fintech can be tools for banks to use to deliver better products and experiences to our customers. Still lots of work to be done there, right? We are competing with the JP Morgans, the Citis, the Bank of Americas. Today, the big banks open just shy of 50% of all new accounts, yet they represent a fraction of the number of institutions, right? So we've got to compete better on that. Fintech can also mean, a standalone customer-facing company. So you think of somebody like Chime, right? So it's what we would call it a neobank. They don't have the charter or the account, but the customer believes that Chime is their bank, and that was kind of version 1 of the neobanks, where it's a generalist approach to the market. Then you saw a bunch of more tailored offerings where they would pick a segment, right? So that could be, you can slice the population by any number of different things. So they take one slice of that and try and target, whether it's students or retired folks or people in a certain line of business or within a certain community or an affinity group. I mean, there are a million ways to do that. We've kind of seen the rise of that. We've started to see a number of those fail. So long-winded answer, I apologize. Those, I don't know that those standalone neobanks really will compete effectively long-term. There will be a handful, but they've got to get a broader product set. They've got to get into the lending space. They'll raise deposits. You can't make a business just on interchange. You need the lending piece to make an interest spread. That's going to be hard to do. Where I see the longer term success for fintech is around the embedded experiences. So again, you think about businesses today that have embedded customers already. They have a base of customers, and we can go in and inject financial products into an experience that makes it better. So you think about on the consumer side, you think about things like the Apple Card, right, or the Apple account. It's a strong brand, really low customer acquisition cost, and they're able to deliver a product that is really, really well done, deepen that relationship and drive a little bit of revenue off of it, also continue to build their payments business. Or you think about somebody like the Uber driver experience, right? Where if you're driving for Uber, you can sign up for an Uber bank account. It's then on your dashboard. So where you see all your driving KPIs, you also see your cash flow. And if you've done that, you get paid real time, right? So there's an incentive for you to sign up for that. Or then you go to something like vertical SaaS. So Toast, I don't know if that's a name that means anything to you all, but they're the operating system for 70 or 80,000 restaurants across the country. So if you own a restaurant, actually Toast is in the market for embedded products today. And
all of the beer you're drinking tonight was ordered via Toast from one of the breweries down the street. They all use Toast.
Yep.
So,
and so what that brewery owner will be able to do soon is have, again, all of their operating KPIs along with their bank accounts and cash flow information all on one screen, right? Super powerful. And then they'll be able to start offering accounts to their employees, right? Because then that makes sense. And so you can see kind of where all this goes.
What industries? So, we often talk about unseen intersections. Like the heart of innovation is like creating these intersections of things that are like would not typically be there or not typically be seen. What industries do you think banking, or we'll call it new banking, the neobanking, like what do you think, what industries do you think are ripe for them to like move into that haven't really been like pushed into this space? I think a lot of digital things you're talking about, a lot of service industry stuff, like of course, like they're trying to remove friction in their high transaction volumes, those types of things. But where do you see maybe the future opportunity for adjacencies or for those intersections?
So if I understand you, Kevin, the place today that's hot is vertical SaaS. I've mentioned it a couple of times, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but vertical SaaS, supply chain finance, I mean, those are the types of places where I think tech-enabled banking, if you want to use that term, can be really powerful and and really improve experience, improve cash flow. It makes adds a ton of value, makes a ton of sense. If you start looking kind of beyond that, the place that I go is it's kind of within our own business, but it's commercial finance.
Okay.
And within the banking space, those transactions tend to be larger and a little more tailored. And we've not yet seen technology move into those spaces yet. You have seen it jump from consumer into small business. So Mercury and Ramp, and there are 5 or 6 fintechs that are really, really good at serving small business. I think commercial is next, right? So whether it's treasury management, whether it's underwriting, credit, I think the technology will be able to take those more unique situations and deliver great experiences or underwriting around that over time.
You're doing something I hope you would do when we decided to have this conversation. I don't feel like I'm talking to a banker, and I can tell that you have this tech inclination towards you. Like the way you think about your business and the way you're thinking about this is not what a traditional person in your industry would be thinking about. To that end, so how does Emprise engage in the entrepreneurial ecosystem? What are some of the programs or some of the things that you do to stay connected? I mean, you probably read a lot and increase your own personal knowledge about the space, but what are other ways as an enterprise that you guys stay connected?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've done now for 3 or 4 or 5 years is we've sponsored the Next Stage Accelerator in Wichita. So some of you may be familiar with that. One of their verticals is Fintech. So we're the lead sponsor of that. We'll help them curate the 8 to 10 finalists in each cohort. We'll have them into the bank and spend time with them. We probably have 30 or 40 people on our team that engage with them over the course of their program. We've selected a use case with one of the finalists every year to then take out of that program and continue developing around. So we see huge value around that. But there are other ways that we do it too. We've invested in a couple of venture capital funds, mostly seed stage. We find those to be most enlightening. And we do that in ways that we can engage with the partners of the fund to gain their insights into the marketplace, and also introductions into companies that may be good partners for us over time, right? And we hope there's a financial return, but we really do it for kind of engaging around that ecosystem.
Do you dedicate resources to that? Like, it would be easy to say it's an investment. I'm gonna track it like an investment. I think I'm gonna get my, whatever the ROIs I'm shooting for there, I think I'm gonna get that back. But you're talking about more engaging in that as a opportunity to connect to the things that sit behind it.
Right. That's an embarrassing question. We've done 3 of them. We've been having conversations in the last month about how do we institutionalize our engagements with both venture capital funds, as well as there are a handful of what I'll call bank consortiums that try and bring a tech insight and tech capabilities to a pretty antiquated industry. We've absolutely gotten value out of that. I would tell you we have not been as systematic and intentional around it as I would like us to be. And then I would say the third piece is just personal relationships. So within our innovation and strategy group, we're all mandated to build relationships in the industry to bring that knowledge and expertise, those potential relationships, potential partnerships back into the company.
Okay. Yeah. The fact you're doing it is, I think, speaks volumes, and the fact that it hasn't maybe worked out a few times and you're still doing it, I think I would not be embarrassed if I were you. Like, a lot of people would quit. But you're learning and you're kind of continuing to move forward. Where did your interest, so you have a prominent family that's been in Wichita for a while, so you have Civic connections through your kind of your family history and your family relations in Wichita and your business. For you personally, I know you've been very active in the Civic community in Wichita since you've been back. Was that something that you kind of glided into when you got to Wichita? Was it something you knew you were going to have to do in the role you were going into? Like, because I think the difference between when you came back to Wichita and when you actually, kind of got in the family business, there's a delta there.
Right.
So where did the civic engagement piece come from, and how's that going?
Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. I will tell you, I'll be honest, it really started with, it felt like that was one of my job duties, right? I mean, you're the president of a community bank. I mean, all of our business is within our communities, or at least at the time it was. We now, with technology, can go further, obviously. But it just felt like that was, I'll say, an obligation. That's just something that you do in that role. I then came to appreciate that that's part of being a good corporate citizen. Like, we need to do that. And so I went from, it's a job obligation, to no, it's actually important. Like, we've been blessed, our community supports us, we need to support back, and we need to engage not only dollars, but also equally, or maybe more importantly, with time across our organization. And so it quickly kind of changed into, no, this, we can actually drive change and make a real difference in our community. And then personally, as my kids are growing up, it's really kind of extended even further to, I want my kids to want to live near me. And if I don't help drive change in Wichita, in Kansas City, we're also in Omaha, those are our three major markets, they're not going to live near me, right? What's going to bring them back to Wichita, Kansas, if I'm not doing things to drive change, supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? So we have growth, vitality, and talent, supporting the EDCs, whether it's the Greater Wichita Partnership in Wichita or the KCADC here in Kansas City. Really important organizations, bringing new jobs, retaining talent, growing quality of place, right? That adds to that vitality and creates the career opportunities that are so important. So it's across the board in terms of where and how we support, but really, really important.
So you pick those lanes. I know you're very active in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Wichita. I see your name pop up all the time. You and I have had conversations about entrepreneurship and some of the things that we've seen in kind of that space. I know Josh and the team, you're very engaged with Josh and the team down in Wichita and kind of what they're doing. We're huge fans of what they're doing. I think I was telling you when we were talking previously, the grass is always greener. When you look at one of those other markets, and you see the things they're doing, you're like, oh, they're doing all the things I wish I could do. They're probably looking up here and
we're looking at Kansas
things.
City going, we love what you're doing. That's why, and that's why I engage here. And it's exciting both entrepreneurially, but also more broadly, the opportunities, the growth, the vitality in Kansas City. So you're doing all the right things.
So you have a very specific, and I think a shared view that I have around entrepreneurs. Like, what is an entrepreneur? What constitutes an entrepreneur? Share a little bit of that, if you will. Not to get you into hot water.
I don't know my audience well enough. I'm going to get myself in trouble.
No. You're amongst friends. You're amongst friends.
So, look, I think an entrepreneurial mindset can have a pretty wide definition. But as I think about supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem, whether it's in Wichita, whether it's in Kansas City, when I think about the importance of that to the growth and vitality and diversity of a community, I very specifically think about entrepreneurs who are doing new things. I'll say innovating, but trying new things, and trying new things that can scale, right? Doesn't mean that it has to be the next Google, but things that can scale beyond just a person or a location, right? So, and by that, it's largely going to be tech enabled, right? So there's a technology component to it.
And as a category of support, as an investor, as all of the above, you think it's important to make those distinctions?
Look, I think everybody starting a new business in a town is important, right?
Sure.
So the folks that are starting a new restaurant, starting a new small business, I don't want us to say that we don't support them, but as I think about the entrepreneurial efforts and how we build an ecosystem around that of talent and expertise and places like this that can help host and convene, I really think about those opportunities to do new things and scale and really drive companies that make an outsized difference.
And so one of the things I think we've seen is that some civic organizations or civic leaders struggle to see how they can impact an entrepreneurial ecosystem. In many ways, I think the idea of an ecosystem is lost on them a little bit. I know there's been a lot of work, actually the gentleman's in the room, there's been a lot of work on ecosystems and defining what an ecosystem builder is and how important they are. What's your view of things you've seen as maybe someone who's had outside perspectives, who's been involved because your business is an innovative business and you've been kind of immersing that part of your life in kind of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. But then you step back and you're on the Greater Wichita Partnership. You're acting now as a civic leader, trying to steer quality of life decisions and some of these other things, talent, some of those other things. Where do you see that opportunity for civic leaders to participate maybe it's some like low-hanging fruit opportunities, their time, right? Rather than having to write checks. Where do you see some of those opportunities that you would like to see? You would like to either do more yourself or you'd like to see other civic leaders like step more into?
I think the opportunities are wide and broad, right? I think it can be as simple as, finding ways to give a little bit of your time, whether it's sharing your experiences in a format like this, whether it's finding an entrepreneur and taking them to lunch a couple of times, to as deep as, I think about leading accelerators. I think about the capital that is needed. I think about the broader education within a market as to the importance of entrepreneurial systems and ecosystems. So that's how do you educate the elected officials to the importance of that and get the support of the city, the county, the state, because there are a number of things that it's really hard for the private sector to deliver in the way that the public sector can. It's investing in, sitting on the investment committee of venture capital funds or angel funds. I just think it's getting involved in whatever way and wherever you find it meaningful. For me, there's a direct connection to fintechs because they both attack my business and also help support it, right? So it's natural for me to go engage in that area, but I mean, it's kind of unlimited, I think, in terms of where you can go help and build. And in Wichita, it's very helpful to have somebody like Josh and now Mary Beth and Quinn and others who are working hard to coordinate those efforts. And I know you and others here are doing that, but having somebody to help coordinate that and align and bring together and make sure we're not duplicating or that there aren't gaps. It will never be perfect, but having somebody who spends their time thinking about that, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. So Kansas City. So you said it was 4 years ago that you guys made the move to Kansas City. So what? Tell me about that. Like, what was driving that? And the decision to land in the Crossroads, I think, was an interesting decision. I love it, obviously. So talk a little bit about kind of that move to Kansas City and what that's been like, and what that was like when you did it, and then we had this like gap in time that we all had to live through, and what was like to start a new bank in the Crossroads right before a pandemic hit.
And I love the Crossroads too. So if I rewind 5 years, we have a company that is growing, that's earning strong profits and is looking to reinvest and continue to grow. And I'm in a market, Wichita, and a bunch of surrounding more rural markets where growth is slowing. And so I find myself at a place of, I want to grow this business for the next generation. I mean, I have a generational time frame, and yet I don't see the opportunities, I'll say internally within the markets we were in, to drive that growth. And I say that is my belief is share shift is a lot harder than share of new, right? And so I looked at Wichita and I said it's going to be hard to scale the kind of growth that we want to scale there. And we've been in Lawrence for 30. So we have locations across the state of Kansas. We've been in Lawrence, Kansas for 30 years. out of our Lawrence and Wichita markets, we were already doing a bunch of business here in Kansas City, whether it was clients from those markets coming in here or then had introduced us to customers and clients here in Kansas City. So it seemed very natural. Like, it didn't seem like it was a far step to do that. One of the gentlemen on my team had a 30-year career at UMB, most of which was in Kansas City, knew the market well, knew talent here. So that helped get us comfortable that we could extend into Kansas City. Obviously, making an investment, you never know how that's going to work out, but we got comfortable that with the right small team, we could start to make a difference. We leased office space. It must have been, we would have leased it about 12 or 18 months before COVID. We literally took possession and moved into our office space about 3 months before COVID. So we have this office space that was designed to host and kind of wide open and bring people in, and obviously couldn't do that. So that was frustrating. It was concerning because you didn't know what that was going to do to business development efforts and building new relationships. So miraculously, we found a few really good relationships. Word of mouth is the best marketing, the best business development. Kansas City has been very welcoming to us, and we find ourselves 4 years in, 20% over where we thought we would be from a portfolio perspective. The team is growing. In fact, I have another interview tomorrow. We're looking to continue to grow our team, expand the services that we offer out of our Kansas City market, and now looking for new Kansas City headquarters. So it has been a terrific investment and a terrific market for us. I truly think, in 10 years, it will be equal to what Wichita is from a size and meaningfulness to our company. I mean, that's how significant it is.
So if I'm just stitching together the conversation we've just had in my head right now, and I'm thinking, all right, Matt said something about loving urban, dense, walkable, the environment of the urban city, the urban core. But then I'm also hearing you talk about you already had business in Kansas City and it came from Wichita and it came from Wichita and Lawrence. Yeah. I can't imagine that the Wichita-Lawrence clients triangulated into the Crossroads. My guess is they probably triangulated Correct. Somewhere into Johnson County. Or other parts of the region, or maybe scattered. Maybe it was more spread out across the region. So was the decision to land in the Crossroads a personal decision and something that you felt like was where you wanted to establish the presence of the brand, or am I?
So I'll be quite honest. When 5 years ago, when we started looking at Kansas City, I did not have the awareness about the Crossroads that I certainly do today. Or did even when we ended up signing the lease. My initial thought was I want to be center of Kansas City because I want to be able to serve. We're only going to open one office initially. Not to say that we won't open more over time, but we're opening one office. I don't want to go north, south, east, and cut off other bits. We don't know where our business is going to come from. We want to be able to serve all. And in the model we were starting with here, most of it was going to be going out to see our commercial clients. And so I wanted to be accessible to all and easy for folks to get to. So I started with, it's got to be downtown to the plaza, somewhere in that corridor. Downtown felt awfully stuffy, get lost in the middle of really tall buildings, as much as I love urban cores and walkability. The plaza, we looked at a few locations there.
Emprise Bank in Westport didn't really ring there.
Not quite.
All right.
And then we spent a little bit of time in the Crossroads, and it just felt right. It just felt like that was the place for us. Vibrant small business community, authentic. And for me, it also, so personally, it had the walkability, the density, the local restaurants and bars and kind of entertainment options. So once we spent a little bit of time there, it became very easy for me to say, we're going to go here. And then, and this is an odd fact, so our office is above Farina. And we were trying to think about how do we create brand value and stand out in a crowded banking industry in Kansas City. Well, one of the things you always want to do is attach to popular brands, right? So going above Michael and Nancy, although there's nothing official, we eat there a lot.
Yeah.
But, it gave us an easy way to say we're above Farina. Everybody knows where that is, right? So you share some brand value there.
Did you get to call downstairs and just tell them to bring you something up?
No, but I have a few clients that call it our cafeteria.
Well, that's maybe unfortunate for you as you're running a business. I know it's not cheap. All right, so you got to name names. I'm going to put you on the spot. I promised you I wouldn't do this, but I'm going to put you on the spot. So you got to name names. Favorite places to hang out in the Crossroads so far? Eat or drink?
So many. And now they're all
You're
going
to blank on all of them now?
They're all going to revolve around cocktails, which
I don't think there's anything wrong with
I
that.
apologize.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Novel is maybe my favorite restaurant at the moment. I love the food, great cocktails. Manny and team take great care of you. Ben Ben is one of the bartenders, cocktailers. He's now gotten me going down a whole rabbit hole around Manhattan cocktails. And so now I just spend most of my time at home tinkering with different flavors. It's not a great habit, but it's fun. King G's last night. So Kevin showed me King G's. Fabulous. Yeah, terrific. I love Town Topic. Mildred's for coffee and their egg sandwich is one of my favorites. I could go on and on.
I know.
I don't know. There's so many.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I just it was a test to see if you really knew.
I love the Crossroads rooftop. I don't know. I could go on and on.
So one of the things I love about you, Matt, is that when I talk to you, I know you're from Wichita. I know you still have a residence in Wichita, but I love the fact that you talk about how Kansas City has embraced you. I get this sense that you've embraced Kansas City, and I know in some of our conversations, you're very. You have a very interesting view. When I say interesting, outsider's perspective on what you see happening here in Kansas City and the opportunity and kind of some of the potential and some of those things. So talk to me a little bit about that. Share some of your thoughts there.
Yeah. Well, so, we had the conversation last night and you're like, grass is always greener. And I'm like, Kevin, what is going on in Kansas City is impressive. Maybe there aren't as many cranes in the air as there are in other markets. I just think the momentum that this community has is impressive. Not to put everything in this lens, but I think winning the World Cup, being one of the host cities for the World Cup, is a really meaningful accomplishment for Kansas City. Partly because it puts us on the map globally, right? I think more than that, it has given us a confidence to go invest in ourselves in an even greater way than we had before. The number of projects that I hear about where it's, we've got to get this done before the World Cup. We've got to get it done. Whether it's the South Loop Park, which is going to be phenomenal. If you've been to Clyde Warren in Dallas, it is really, really cool how that connects the community and what you can do there. Whether it's the old Kansas City Star building, whether it's Pinway Place.
Yeah, the Vince Bryant project over there, the Ferris wheel.
Yeah, yep. Ferris wheel should be here in October or November, he said. So, these things are coming along, and they're coming along quickly. And then just the excitement that the World Cup will bring. Kansas City will be in the global spotlight for 2 months. We're going to have 7, 8, 9 games here. We might go as far as the quarterfinals in terms of the games we're able to host. Will likely be a training city, so there will be some countries that Kansas City is their kind of headquarters for those couple of months. I don't want to put too much on it, but I just think it pulls together so many exciting developments that are going on throughout this community.
So when you look at the Crossroads and you take that broader lens that you just took of Kansas City, and then you look at the Crossroads, what do you see in terms of the opportunity, in the Crossroads? And I know you know some of the folks that either own or develop or are looking at the same area kind of thing. What are your thoughts on kind of where we're at right now? And
yeah, I think there's great excitement around what's going on in the Crossroads. There are 2 or 3 pretty significant, sizable multifamily projects that are up out of the ground. I don't have completion dates, but I mean, they will add 400, 500, 600 new doors just between a couple of projects. Will be great for the Crossroads. I'm hearing about hospitality projects that haven't started, but there's great interest in. Office is a little challenging right now. I don't expect to see a lot of office projects, but there is.
Do you think that's going to come back, or do you think there needs to be some seismic shift in how we approach office space?
Yeah. So I think it's heavily dependent upon the market. And here's what I say. So I look at Wichita. No one in my office in Wichita has a drive longer than 20 minutes. There's no commute longer than 20 minutes. I believe there is great value to coming together in person to collaborate, build relationships, work faster, smarter, be more creative, more strategic. Not to say that there aren't some things that can be done well at home or remote, and we do have remote workers, but I think there's real value in being in person at least some of the time. So there's no excuse for us not to be able to do that. If I look at New York, San Francisco, some of the major metro areas where there are commutes as long as an hour and a half one way, I'm like, I understand when you're talking about 3 hours out of your day, I understand not wanting to commute into the office. And so I don't know what those markets are going to do. I don't know. I think for Wichita, for Kansas City, for Oklahoma City, Omaha, Des Moines, Sioux Falls, we're going to be back in the office with flexibility, but we're going to be back in the office.
Yeah, it was almost like somebody tapped all those people on the shoulders and said, "You realize what you're doing? Like, this is a wake up call. You can't spend 3 hours a day on a train,
Yeah, exactly
or
right.
a bus." Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked about you're expanding, and you've talked about the Crossroads and your love for the Crossroads. So is it just safe to generally say that you're still plan on being in the neighborhood? You still plan on being in the same area?
We will do everything we can
All right.
to have a bigger presence in the same exact neighborhood.
All right, fantastic. That's great news. That's great news for all of us.
I mean, we all know real estate in the Crossroads is challenging. There are not a lot of great opportunities in a pretty small neighborhood, but we're doing everything we can, working with the right people to make sure that we stay in the neighborhood.
Oh man, don't let any of the urban development folks hear you say that, because the bane of all their existence is service parking lots in this area, and how everybody complains about parking, but everywhere you go, there's surface parking lots everywhere. So can we just get some of them to sell to guys like you that want to like build things on them, please? I mean, come on.
So it may be my 20 years in New York. I hate but we don't have parking. Like I hate that argument, right? Well, there are parking garages, there are Ubers, there are other ways to get around, right? So I hope that we take some of those opportunities to really build important, cool, meaningful buildings, developments in the Crossroads. I think that will give us plenty of runway to continue to grow and develop in a really important part of town and not see some of that slip away into other areas.
I like the thought of someone with your perspective and experience being one of the people who's developing something here, because you understand the importance of what, street access and, what the first floor of a building means to the neighborhood. Right. And so
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. So
absolutely,
looking forward to see what you do. Looking forward to any kind of timeline when you think you're going to know or like tell us.
So I would love to be able to come back in 3 or 4 months and have a site with renderings. That is an optimistic case, but that's what we're working towards.
All right. Well, we're going to hold you to that.
Okay.
Yep. So that's fantastic. Would love to find out where you're going to be and hear more about like kind of what your plans are when you're there. Matt, anything we haven't talked about that you want to share tonight? Anything that like comes to mind?
Feels like we've covered a lot. I mean, I might open it up to questions if anybody has questions, things we didn't cover, things you're curious about. Did I just break protocol?
Not at all. Not at all. We just all knew who the first hand up was going to be. Hand him the mic, Rich. Yeah. He already raised his hand.
There's always one of them.
Yeah. This is our one in every crowd guy.
I think I might start asking questions nowadays.
No, come on, man.
No. So great, great talk. One thing I would want to ask, especially like what you talked about with the tech side of things and finances, for you being in the banking side of things, what has been the most disruptive piece of technology that for you guys has been an obstacle to overcome, especially like you said with finance and banking being relatively the same for the last 100 or some odd years, and things like money and stuff like that changing, what for you guys has been the most disruptive piece of technology to try and tackle? And
How much time do we have?
All the time you want. All the time you want. We have plenty of food and beverages back there. So let's go.
I would probably categorize them into a couple of different buckets. I think all the consumer neobanks, right? The Chimes and everything. Not that they are taking so much business away, but they are driving the industry to be so tech forward. So the B of A's, the JP Morgans are fast followers, and I think deliver excellent digital experiences today. I think Emprise does too, but it's really hard for smaller banks to keep up if you're not being really, really intentional about your partnerships. So the consumer, I'll say the consumer checking piece. It's wealth management is not as large a piece of our business as some, but the whole robo-advisor that whole disruption has been really, really significant for the industry. Pricing has come down significantly, continues to come down. And so that's an area that's seen huge disruption. Home mortgages is another one where I think Rocket Mortgage does more than 50% of the mortgage origination. I don't know about today because the market's been so different in the last 12 months. But if you looked at it 12 or 24 months ago, I think they were doing north of 50%. They're not a bank. I should know when they started. It has not been that long.
I was going to say they haven't been around that long.
They haven't been around
to have
that
50%,
long.
Yeah.
And so that's when you think about the size of the mortgage market, that is massive disruption, right? So the sad thing is I could continue ticking through a whole bunch of different things, but that probably gives you some sense. And I'll say one more: the large brands entering digital banking. So I think about Google. I mean, they were able to generate $1 billion of deposits in the first day they opened. The Apple Card, all the payments that they're working on. I mean, the big tech companies having an interest in banking, I never would have guessed it, but they do. And they obviously can deliver great technology experiences, right? So that's an area we'll continue to watch. But as soon as Google, Apple, somebody decides they really want to be in the banking business, that's going to be a whole nother layer of disruption.
So how do you, all right, now I got a question. So I'm thinking about this Silicon Valley Bank incident. I'm thinking about like, how do you, as you see these emerging, these disruptions start to happen, what's that do to the or what could that potentially do to the confidence that consumers need to have in their banking institutions and where they put their money?
Yeah. So maybe let me go back and just talk about SVB for a minute.
Okay.
And specifically talk about how they were such an outlier relative to almost every other banking institution. Silvergate's a little bit different. I mean, there's the crypto-related banks, but SVB was not a crypto-related bank. They were very much a startup VC bank. So their model was, we will lend to all the VC-funded companies with high-quality VCs because we know those VCs want to continue to be able to leverage their equity dollars with debt dollars. So if one of them goes bad, VCs will make good on it. So they'll continue that access to the leverage, right? And then they pulled in the personal banking for the executive teams of all of those. Highly, highly concentrated in terms of the number of, I would say, kind of core people that were connected to that universe of customer base. So when Peter Thiel sent out his email, I mean, that just set off a massive fire. What I kind of think about, and I'm jumping around. So two major differences. They had a very concentrated customer base that on average had a high level of deposits. So when you look at the percentage of their deposits that were not insured, it was like 90%. It was an incredibly high percentage. The big banks average 50%. We're at like 30%. So huge difference. And then probably most importantly, you look at how they manage their investment portfolio. So they extended their duration to reach for additional yield. What that means is when rates move up, the price of those bonds go down, and functionally you can't sell them because if you sell a bond at a loss, that's an instant hit to capital. Banks are very sensitive to capital. Examiners are very sensitive to banks' capital ratios. So what that meant is even though they had a large investment portfolio, they had zero functional liquidity. So then they go to reposition their portfolio. Goldman's doing that for them. The market moves against them, and they can't get that done. And those two factors, the highly concentrated deposits with a huge percentage of unsecured deposits, and the lack of any functional liquidity, they just go out of business instantly. They can't. What ended up happening was they weren't able to settle up with the Fed at night, and so they had to come in and close them down. You look at that across all of their peers or smaller banks, they are outliers across both of those. So if you look at their investment portfolio, today, I mean, bonds have moved against every single bank, right? Today, for us, about 20%, our mark to market would be about 20% of our equity. For them, the number was approaching, I think, something like 75 to 90%, right? So, I mean, it just, they were in a spot where if they went to drive liquidity, they would almost push themselves out of business.
Yeah,
so I rambled way too long.
Yeah, painted themselves in a corner,
Exactly.
effectively. Yeah,
and so that's a pretty unique situation. I don't think we're going to see other Silicon Valley banks, but there are other risks out there around rate environment.
But some of these, like way they're moving into other technologies or the way some of these other players are moving in, presents no risk in the way they're doing it at this point in time, because they still stand behind a lot of the regulated entities that do protect consumers in the space. Or is that something we need to keep our eyes on?
I think we need to keep our eyes on it, and it depends on whether you're talking about supporting fintechs or crypto. Crypto is a whole separate thing in my mind. I think there are reasons as banks we need to be in that space. I don't think it's quite ready for us for prime time yet. But then on the fintech side of things, the risks are different. There are risks, but I think it's something we absolutely, as an industry, need to continue to lean into. And the regulatory agencies just today announced kind of a new department and its supervision of novel activities.
Oh, wow. All right.
So it is banking as a service, it's crypto.
Interesting.
There may be one or two other things under there. So they're now putting some focus into that. I haven't read all the details yet, but it is interesting that they're now saying they're not going to forbid it. They're going to regulate it, which I think is progress. And hopefully it will continue to give us more guidelines for how to go operate in that environment.
Yeah, makes sense. Matt, thanks for spending time with us again. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate that you brought your business to Kansas City and that you've embraced the community as much as you feel like the community's embraced you. We need champions like you in Kansas City, people that bring these perspectives in. So thank you. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you to all of you for welcoming us in Kansas City. So we couldn't do it without all of you. We look forward to being able to support you all as you continue to grow and build your businesses. So thank you.
Thanks a lot.